Welcome to The Solar Coaster, a podcast about the ups and downs of the Australian solar industry, brought to you by the technical team at Supply Partners.
Here we are today for a special edition of the Solar Coaster podcast. And I'm Lliam Ricketts, the Innovation Director of Supply Partners and New Energy Training. And I have a great guest here today, David McElrea, the new CEO of the Smart Energy Council. David, really great to have you here, mate.
I'm thrilled that I warrant a special edition of Solar Coaster, so I'm really excited to have a chat to you.
Yeah, mate, we're really excited to have you here as well, mate. And I know a lot of the retailers and installers in the market are really interested to hear from you and hear an update. You know, we've got a fair few things we're going to talk about today, but I know one thing that the installers and the retailers are going to be really interested to hear about is the exclusive update we're going to have about the cheaper home battery scheme. I know that you're talking to Minister Bowen's office pretty much on a daily basis, and a lot of people want to understand, you know, what has the rebate looked like up until the end of April? What's the trend look like since the 1st of May? And where the battery rebate's heading from here, mate? Yeah,
I think that's right. And I'm really excited to talk to you about that. It's a really interesting time post 1 May and in the lead up to 1 May. There's a lot is shifting. And I think the next few months are going to be really important. So I'm really excited to dig into some numbers and where I see it going. I get out and talk to a lot of the industry and the politicians, so I think I've got a good bird's eye view of what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, really exciting. A lot of people have invested a lot in this industry at the moment due to the cheaper home battery scheme, so we all want to know what's happening with it and where the certainty is in the scheme. You know, we're a wholesale distributor and there's many other suppliers in the industry which have invested a lot in staff and stock and warehouses. Installers have invested a lot in staff as well. There's a lot of people that have a lot on the line, so I know that that's going to be a really interesting point people want to hear about. But we've got some great things we're going to talk about today. The first one, though, I suppose I want to challenge you a little bit, David, because there's something I'm a bit concerned about. I've been in this industry since 2009, and when I started in this industry, there were rebates for solar panels, and then the renewable energy target kicked in with double incentives there, where they had 5 times multiplier on credits and all this stuff that brought in hundreds of brands of solar panels that didn't stay in the market. They came in when the rebates boomed, and in those early days, they left the market and they left what we call solar orphans. So there's homeowners and business owners out there that have solar panels, 25-year warranties on them, where the manufacturer's left and they have no warranty at all. Now, under the cheaper home battery scheme, as long as a manufacturer gets the right certificates together, they can get on the approved list and theoretically they can enter the market on the first day of this rebate and leave as the rebate winds down, leaving battery orphans. Now, us at Supply Partners, we do something different at our business to make sure the retailers and installers we sell to are protected. We choose manufacturers that have been in the market for a long time, that have established teams in Australia and have proven they're committed to the Australian market. We do all that due diligence, and people know Supply Partners and know that the products we sell, they're going to be around and be supported. But I'm seeing so many products, mate, that have come into this market as this rebate started, and I'm very concerned they're going to leave as soon as the rebate starts to wind down. What is the Smart Energy Council doing to protect us in this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you raise is a really important point. And just to sort of answer your question in general terms first before in specifics, I think the thing about the battery market, what we've got to realise is that we are now an essential part of a household, and that is going to increase more and more with electric vehicles and just household electrification. So, you know, we will be like the fridge or the washing machine. Every household will have one. So there is a real we've been through this period of this extraordinary period of the last 12 months, this huge boom. And now that this may be, I think, settling down into something that's a bit more sustainable, hopefully a bit less boom bust, what I think the industry needs to do, and that includes the Smart Energy Council as the industry body, is focus on some of those quality issues that you've just raised, sustainability issues, because what we want to be is as an industry that people trust, that people know that they buy products that work and that they're supported. So I'm really open to that discussion, I think, with the industry about how do we, in a range of fronts, things like as well, not only what you've raised, like making sure inverter sizes are correct when they're being installed, making sure that the ratio of panels is right to the battery size. There's a whole lot of things like that. And then the support that's going to be provided, I think we need to take responsibility for as an industry to say, let's make sure that we are promoting ourselves as a sustainable industry that is focused on quality for the long term so that we build long-term relationships with customers. I think there's a role for us to play in pushing that and having that discussion. I'm really pleased that you and supply partners are sort of pushing us on that. I think that's great, and I'm happy to be pushed on that. And I think your approach to it as a business, that you take it seriously, and therefore that when people trade with you, they know that you take it seriously, you've given it consideration. I think that's really important. But just I think for the sector over the next year or so, we really need to look at ourselves and say, okay, how do we make sure we're not just ticking the minimum regulatory standards, that we're building a sector that is here for the long term, that will be there to provide customer support, that has a base in Australia.
And that ongoing support, mate. Like you said, retailers and installers need to take responsibility, and
they need to think about it.
The thing that we are telling the market every day is, yes, we want to see new innovative products coming into market, but if they've just entered the market as the rebate started, they don't have a place of business in this country, a proper office set up with real staff in there to have technical support, to have warranty support. They haven't shown commitment to the market. So if you're a participant in the Australian solar industry and battery industry, and you go and jump on one of these products that's just been approved, and they haven't got those teams in the country, I'd really say they're not being responsible to the outcomes for the homeowner or business owner, and that's not the type of behaviour I want to see in this industry. So, I'm challenging you, but I'm also challenging the retailers and installers out there to choose products that are going to be around for the industry.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is, Australia has been the hottest battery market in the world for the last 12 months. And we are now, I think it emerged the third biggest battery market in the world.
Wow.
By numbers for a tiny little country. So what does that mean? That means there's been a lot of new entrants, and I think that's a great thing. Like that's good. That pushes the rest of the sector. That requires innovation. That's a bit of price competition. In the end, is not unhealthy. That makes us better, leaner, and ultimately better for the end users. So I really want to see new entrants coming in, but I agree that if you're coming here, you need to be committed to this market. And why wouldn't you be? We will remain a huge market for the foreseeable future. So if you come and you are going to trade in this market, you should take that seriously, and you should take a long-term obligation seriously. I think that's, as the industry body, I think that's in everyone's interests as well, and that's the sort of thing we'd encourage. So I'm really glad you're really putting this on the agenda. It's something I certainly heard as well when we were talking about changes to the Cheaper Home Battery Program last year. So it's definitely something that we need to look at as a sector. And, good on you for pushing it, and good on you for, I'm happy to have my feet held to the fire. That's the sort of thing that we should be focused on, and we should discuss more as a sector.
That's what the SEC's always been known about. So let's try to see some guardrails put in place, and I'm here to work with you guys, and I know many other great industry participants are, but I think there needs to be some changes there. So I look forward to seeing those evolve as you really now got your feet under the desk, but you definitely got some big challenges straight away.
Yeah, that's right.
So, David, you were talking about us being one of the biggest battery markets in the world. Mate,
Amazing.
10 gigawatt hours put in this scheme in under 12 months. Like 10 gigawatt hours. It is huge, mate. And that has actually now started to reflect through to what I think was around 3 weeks ago, wholesale electricity prices going down. And just in the last couple of days, we've seen retail prices from the Australian Energy Regulator. So that's the actual bills to homeowners and business owners. They're going down now because of solar and battery investment, mate, under this great scheme.
So power prices are going down in this country. For the first time in a really long time, power prices are going down. Now, why are they going down? It's because of the people that will be listening to this podcast. They're the ones that have done it. It's the installers. It's everyone involved in this industry who've put 10 gigawatts into over 400,000 homes in like under a year, right? Just unbelievable outcome. Just who would have thought? The government didn't think it. No one thought it. So that's amazing outcome. That has brought power prices down. And the other it's done a number of other things that are amazing. So you had over summer, you had a pretty hot summer, and in the East Coast in particular, where most of the country live, in previous years when you've had those hot summers, you get the premier or the of your state or the energy minister going on saying at 4 o'clock, hey everyone, turn off your washing machine, turn off your dishwasher. We've got to reduce our power because we're hitting too high. That didn't happen. No problems this summer. Why? Because people had installed solar and batteries, and they get home and they turn the air conditioner on and they're pulling out of their battery. So we could run our households without ministers worrying about it. That's the first time on a hot summer that's also happened in a very long time. So it's just...
So they build the grid for Christmas Day, mate.
Yeah, that's right.
Usually what they say.
Right, exactly. So it's and the other thing, people talk about the duck curve, which is the fact that, when those of us that work 9 to 5 most of the time, we get home, it's a hot day, you turn the aircon on, you turn your oven on, you might put your washing machine or something because your kids' school uniforms are dirty and you haven't washed them for the week. You know what it's like. So all of a sudden your energy usage goes through the roof. Well, what is already happening is the flattening of that famous duck curve. So people are going home and instead of drawing from the grid, they're drawing from their battery that they've charged during the day. So that is also flattening out. And what does all this mean for people? Well, for people that have gone out and bought solar and gone out and bought batteries, they are saving money on their power bills. But you just said, Lliam, power prices are going down. So people that don't have solar and batteries are also benefiting. All of Australia is benefiting from the work that the people that are listening to this have done. They've brought down everyone's power bills. So it means that the whole country has benefited. What we are doing in this industry is bringing down power prices for all Australians, whether they have solar and a battery or not, and that's just a terrific outcome. And again, I know how hard people have worked. Like people have been working weekends and long hours to meet the demand, but the impact has been extraordinary. And long may it continue.
And it's awesome to hear that it's actually reducing costs for people because cost of living pressures are really hard at the moment, mate. And
huge.
The fact that it is supporting people that don't have solar and batteries by actual retail prices coming down. It just shows this scheme is good expenditure of federal budget, and I think it's been a success so far and will continue to be so.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that shows and gives me comfort as the CEO, I've worked in politics. I sort of know how politics works. This is really popular because cost of living, as you said, is in politics number one issue. And what's the best thing that's addressing cost of living at the moment? This scheme, because bring down power bills for all Australians. So that means for the Australian government, the federal government, the Labor government, it's very popular. People love it. It makes me really confident about the future of the scheme, but I'll talk a bit more about that later, I think. I am still concerned, though, about the scheme. It doesn't necessarily have support from all sides of politics. So, just to name it, like the federal opposition, the Liberal Party, are still a little bit unclear. One Nation Party, I'm worried about their support for it. So, it's my job to get out to them and explain why it's doing such a good job, and the numbers speak for themselves. But there is a little bit of... Unfortunately, there is a little bit of it's still a bit of a political football, and it shouldn't be because it's been so successful. It's bring down power prices for everyone, and for those that have gone out and bought a system, they are saving huge amounts of money. So it couldn't have been more successful, but you can never stop. As your industry representative, we have to be out there in Canberra pounding the pavement to try and make sure that this is as safe as possible because there's always a little bit of risk, unfortunately, with this stuff.
Mate, nothing like some healthy debate, but the thing is the figures, as you said, don't lie. And the thing is if we continue to see electricity prices come down, then that means the scheme's achieving great outcomes for all Australians. So, let's keep an eye on that, and I hope you guys keep advocating well for the industry.
There's one more thing too that I want people to understand, because you've got a live debate in this country in politics about coal, and you might think, well, I do solar, that doesn't affect me. I do batteries that in households or small businesses or commercial, that doesn't affect me. Well, it does. It's something we have to care about. It's not just wind farms or large scale. When you run a coal-fired power plant, you have to run it at a minimum of 25%. It's different to gas. Gas you can turn all the way, you can turn off when it's too. Coal always has to run because of the engineering nature of it. So when you have, particularly in summer, you have a hot day and you have too much in the system coming through household solar, they have to go in and turn down everyone's solar. So it means households are having their solar turned off. Mm-hmm. And they're not charging the system they've paid for. So that affects the financial benefit that our customers get from it, that households get from it, and the attractiveness of it, because it's being turned off because we're funding a coal-fired power plant, which we no longer need. So there is still a debate in this country that needs to be had about that stuff. It affects all of us in this sector. And again, that's my job. That's why we've got people like you as members, and hopefully some of the people listening. We have to be in these debates. We have to, with state governments, with federal governments, to really push our sector, because we're the ones solving the problem. We're doing it. It's the cheapest form of energy. It's the most reliable form of energy, and it's bringing down everyone's power bills. So even though it's pretty contested politics, it's a job that we have to do, and we can't ignore it.
Yeah, no, very good point, mate. And curtailment's the last thing we want to see.
We don't
the
want
last
to
thing
see
you want to do is put
Sometimes you're going to need to see it, right? We all know that, right? Curtailment. But what we don't want to do is drive additional curtailment because we're running a coal-fired power plant that no one actually needs or wants and is there because someone's made a dumb political promise.
Yeah, for sure. So, David, the residential and really small-scale commercial space is going really hard because of the cheaper home battery scheme, but the C&I space, so commercial, industrial, solar, that kind of 30 kVA to multi-megawatt rooftop systems, we've seen that part of the market become a little bit soft recently. We've got engineers and technical staff here that help people do their network applications. One of the example we see is the DNSPs out there take up forever to review the network application, sometimes don't approve them even though there is robust network there. That's one of many challenges. What do you think about the C&I sector, and what is the Smart Energy Council doing to help C&I see the growth again as it was seeing?
Well, as the new CEO, but before that I spent 12 months heading the policy and advocacy work, so I've had a good chance to think about this, and look, consumer energy, household energy is our number one focus as an industry body, but the second highest focus for me is this commercial and industrial space, because we call it the missing middle. So we've got our small business, small commercial households, large scale, which is not going very well, to be honest, but this is the bit that we need to solve, but there's a number of reasons why. When you really dig into it, it's complicated policy reasons. You've just named one. A big problem that if you talk to the guys doing it, the installers in the space, it's really hard to quote. It's so complicated, and they don't know how long it'll take. Like, it can take years to get a system in, like literally 2 years. You hear from go to woe, and the different networks have different rules, and they might have 50 different. So it makes it really hard for them to accurately provide a quote to a customer. So, and then there's connection delays with the network. So that's a real problem. You and I were talking earlier. We had a look at your warehouse that we're in now. You've got solar on the roof, but you lease this. You don't own it, and very few people own their warehouse, right? So that's a big problem. So
even us leasing the facility, even though we run a solar business, we had a lot of challenges with the landlords to even though we leased the property and were putting it up at our cost, there were challenges there. So definitely been so much commercial property in the country is probably owned by property trusts and is leased properties. We need to see better mechanisms in place to allow that to happen easier.
That's right. And so you've got to incentivise the landlord, who's ultimately probably like a listed company, property trust on the ASX. They don't care. They're renewable, non-renewable. None of that matters to them. They're just interested in financial returns. So you've got to think about how do we incentivise them to spend the money or encourage their tenants as well to work with their tenants to do it. And you're a special case because you're in the sector, but most tenants are going to say, well, I'm not going to bother because I can't take it with me, and my lease isn't worth it. So there's a real issue there with landlord and tenants in the commercial that I think that's a hard nut to crack. So that's another big policy challenge. So it's complicated, but we got some smart people really working on it. We're engaging with the federal government, and I think there's goodwill from federal and state governments to try and solve this missing middle. But then there's other issues as well that probably.
Yeah, well, CNI at the moment, he's still very strong up to that 100 kVA applications, and now growing even more. We've been known as a commercial specialist for rooftop PV, but now we're supporting so many companies doing larger and larger commercial energy storage. We're known as a technical distributor and one of the leading commercial energy storage businesses. But one thing that we're hearing from a fair few customers, and I've actually heard some chatter, there's some debate around potentially changing the threshold for STCs from 100 kilowatts to, I've heard noises of 250 kilowatts or even greater, that you could potentially under the SRES get STCs for putting in, wouldn't it be great if you could get STCs for getting a half a meg system opposed to having to go into the LRET? What are your thoughts around that? What have you heard in regards to the potential of the 100 kilowatt threshold getting increased?
Look, I haven't heard anything from government necessarily, but it's certainly something we're looking at as something to give it a shot in the arm. Victorian government did something last year to try and do a little bit of work on it with the VEX scheme. I think some of the other state governments are also looking at it, but ideally you'd have something done at a federal level through the STC scheme, which is a really well operating scheme with buyers and stuff, liquid scheme. So. It's certainly something that we're looking hard at to try and see. Would it solve all the problems? No, because I've just named some other ones that I think will get in the way, but it's a sort of thing that might give it a shot in the arm. I think the commercial and industrial sector would feel they have suffered a little bit, been a bit of the poorer cousin in the last, as they've watched the household sector go crazy. So it'd be nice to give it a shot in the arm and to really start doing that as we, because it's also a simple thing to do as we then work through some of those tougher things. So it's certainly something we're looking at, and we'll look to engage with governments, state and federal governments. Yeah,
mate, that'd be awesome. The landlord thing's one, as you said, there's a whole myriad of challenges, but that up to 100 kilowatt space, that space actually getting a bit hotter right now. Yeah. We're seeing businesses understand that they can get solar and batteries and reduce their costs. And some of the businesses we sell the larger format commercial panels to and the commercial energy storage batteries, we're doing more and more sales in that space. But there's other limiting factors. And if you want to see, I think you said to me when we were doing a bit of a tour of our headquarters, wouldn't it be great to see solar on every single warehouse and commercial roof? That's not going to happen unless some new changes occur.
Yeah. And then ultimately, I think too, what you'd like to see, part of the other reason that could do is then drive a more of an EV and lighter commercial vehicles charging at the very least, right? Your vans and your utes or something like that you're using, or even your forklifts, right? Like
we've got all electric forklifts, and I have 7 EV chargers here at our Brisbane offices. So 7 EV chargers, and I think we have 4 electric forklifts. Yeah. So sometimes we're charging. Yeah, you'd be charging a lot of items. Yeah.
And that should be like, we know that we have to do that in this country, and so making it easier for businesses to sort of charge their fleets is going to be really important, from light passenger vehicles through to those and trucking in due course as well is harder in some senses, but that's what we're going to need to see. So having that being able to power at the site will be really important, and it'll also build network stability, which is going to be important in a distributed system as well.
Yeah. David, there's a real skills shortage in this country to achieve the renewable energy revolution, mate. And, we're doing our bit with new energy training, educating electricians. But one thing I speak to about people out there is go get a trade, go become an electrician, because we have the electrification journey coming into every house and building out there. But in regards to the skills shortage, what are your thoughts about how we can help that along?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really long-term issue too. That governments, again, at all levels, I think, have a role to play in, and that is to encourage people into trades, to support apprentices through those tough years as well, and to support RTOs like yours. So I think there's a role for government in that, but. I have the same. I've had that conversation with heaps of kids who are sort of at that age, looking around what to do. So if you're like become a sparky, like if you're an apprentice listening to this, you walk into a job. Like I've got kids in high school, and you start to think, well, what are they going to do with AI coming? I don't know what the jobs will be.
My son just started high school, same thing.
Yeah, so you're like, oh, what do these kids do with AI coming? What will jobs will be around 10 years? Well, we'll need sparkies. We'll need we'll be electrifying everything. Those jobs will be there. So it makes sense, I think, for people to do it. Someone's got to run those data centres that'll be everywhere. But someone, all this electrification, that's going to need to be done by humans. We're going to need oversight of that in our homes and in our businesses. So it's a great job. It's a job with some certainty in where you can make a great living. But in terms of the shortage, I think there just needs to be. I think we need focus on it from governments, and I would say too. Probably particularly the large-scale companies as well, but also, it's also the industry's responsibility to hire apprentices, and it is your responsibility to the next generation. To your, someone gave you an apprenticeship, so it is your responsibility to the next generation, to the future of the industry, to bring those apprentices on, to sort of look after them, so that we are still sort of building that pipeline of skilled workers into the future. And then ideally, I think, get them skilled up at places like new energy training as well. So
yeah, man, if there's one career that kids should be choosing out there is getting into a trade, like an electrical trade for the electrification journey.
Yep.
Because AI is not going to be taking your job when it comes to wiring up a renewable energy system.
Unfortunately, they could do my job, and the next CEO of the Smart Energy Council might just be a chatbot.
Just might be an avatar.
Yeah,
mate.
just might be.
Next time I'm going to be talking to an avatar.
Yeah. Probably better looking too. So so my job's probably not safe, but might find me on the tools doing my apprenticeship in a few years' time as well.
Mate, we'll help you wire up a few batteries, mate. Don't you worry. David, this has been a really interesting conversation and some really great topics. We're shortly going to talk about the exclusive insights and updates to what you're hearing from the Minister Bowen's office regarding the cheaper home battery scheme, and give that update to the industry. Before we jump into that final part, I want to talk about one more threat that our industry's under at the moment, which is from the AEMC. I know that they're looking at changing tariffs and just completely changing the way people pay for electricity, which is a major threat. Can you tell me a little bit about what's happening there and what you're doing to help that not come to the fore, mate?
Yeah, and so for those that don't know, the AEMC stands for Australian Energy Market Commission, and there's all these weird bodies that operate in the sector, but they set the rules for electricity prices and how the electricity networks function and so forth. Now that sounds pretty boring but for our industry, it's actually incredibly important. So they set the rules around how the network set wholesale prices, which then influences how the electricity retailers set retail prices, and ultimately then how you're going to pitch if you're selling a product to a business or to a household. What they have been looking at is reforming those tariffs, and what has been on the table from them is to move electricity tariffs to 100% fixed. In other words, you would not have any reduction in your power bill depending on if your usage changed. So if they implement that, a household that installed a solar and a battery would have no real reduction in their power bill from that investment. So if that occurs, that's the end of the industry because no one's going to do it anymore. People will just stop overnight.
But also the 2 out of 5 households that have already made an investment on solar on their home would have the
rules would change.
Their investment would be torn up.
Yeah, and they've made an investment based on the rules, and the rules would change. So it's an existential threat to our industry. If it was to occur, it would be the end, and end of, frankly, probably you guys and most of the people listening to this, because there'd be no one buying the products anymore. So we take it incredibly seriously. We've already fought back on it really hard. This is the sort of stuff we do at the Smart Energy Council behind the scenes. People don't realise, and there's probably a whole lot of people who are not members of ours who don't know that we're doing all this stuff on their behalf. So they should be pretty grateful we're here. That's why we're so grateful to have members like you who, the only reason I can do this is because I have members like you who pay me money. So if we go away, these guys will roll over the top. So it's really important that we have that support, but we are fighting back on that. I think we've pushed back on it pretty successfully, but you never stop, right? Like there are financial interests at play here from very powerful actors who would make a lot of money if they moved to a fixed tariff. They're big companies with huge lobbying power, big corporate affairs departments. And we have to push back on them. And again, that's my job, and I love it. I love doing it. But it is a fight that it's not over, and it will never stop. And it's why we need to be, in that case, you've got to pound the halls of Canberra, of the state parliaments, and get into the regulators as well, which is what I do on a day-to-day basis. But it's a real threat to people, and it's something people should keep an eye on through you or through the Smart Energy Council. We'll keep you updated.
Keep fighting the good fight on behalf of the industry.
We will.
Even reflect back on when the federal government did the Warburton report and tried to can the renewable energy target. You guys were, advocating for the industry and helped that basically get thrown in the bin.
We stopped that back then, over 10 years ago, but and we'll stop this. We won't let it happen. We will stop it, but you can never relax. You got to always be vigilant, basically. That's
why we continue to support you as a premium member, and I definitely encourage people listening to this. I know there'll be a lot of installers and installers, retailers, and wholesale suppliers and manufacturers that are members of you guys. But I genuinely do think it's a good thing to support you guys because you guys support us, making sure the industry is still viable. Look at that AMC thing we just gave the example of. If you guys weren't there to advocate for that and they got that through, it'd just basically end. Be
game over, and then you'd be, how do we stop it? So, we really do. We're only as strong as the members as well that we have, and if we don't have members, we don't know what's going on. If I go into a minister, they need to know that I've got this industry behind me. So we need to have members. Otherwise, I'm just a guy with an opinion. So it's important for us to be powerful, and we are powerful. But the more members we have, the more powerful we are. So it's great to have you as members, but that's why we want people as our members, because that is in the interests of everybody.
Well, I hope you picked up plenty more, mate, because we've got the battery rebate because of you guys.
You'd hope so.
I hope you picked up many more. Look, David, we've had a really good discussion today, but let's get on to what's a real hot topic, which is this exclusive insight into what's been happening under the Cheaper Home Battery Scheme. Yep. And I know that you're talking to Minister Bowen's office nearly every day. And just before you came in to do this podcast episode with us, you spoke to the Minister's office to get us some data points and give us the industry, the installers and retailers, and us suppliers that are all investing so much in this on what's happened in the scheme so far and the budget up to the end of April, what's happened since the 1st of May forward, and what do you see happening with this rebate scheme leading it to 2030 and its security, mate?
Yeah. Look, I talk to, in my job, I get a bit of a bird's eye view, so I talk to government and regulators and the industry. So, I think I got a pretty good sense of what's happened over the last few weeks, as I think you do, particularly in the wholesale market as well. But at the peak there, right, like that March-April period when people working 7 days a week and, really, really hard, just trying to get really race the clock, we were doing around 20,000 installations a week. And they were big systems, and it kept going up all the way to the 1st of May. Just that line kept going up. But, you were by the end there at that peak averaging about 35 systems out 35
kilowatt hours.
A system. So that's the average, right?
So 20,000 per week at the peak.
Yeah, averaging
average of
about 30 plus 35. Yeah,
around
so
35
big systems,
kilowatt
right?
hours per
And as I
system.
say, it just went up all the way to the end. So it went up between the March and April. Huge amount of installation. So then what's happened 1st May? As we knew, it was designed to drop off. We now think it's back down to about 10,000 a week, which, to be fair, is what it was probably December last year, back to actually the level earlier in the program. But a really dramatic drop-off in size to more like 20 kilowatt hours as an average. So a pretty significant reduction in size.
So from the 1st of May, the data you got was we're now seeing around 10,000 installations per week, now at a 20 kilowatt hour average.
So halved from that peak in terms of numbers, and then down to. I would say this: these are sort of breaking numbers, as it were, but it is going to take a little bit of time for us to work all this out. It is a bit murky at the moment because, a whole lot of installers who are listening to this might have taken some time off because they were knackered because they've been working so hard, so they might have taken some time off. I think probably people were, installers who are listening to this probably installed their larger batteries to beat the 1st of May and maybe might have held back some of their smaller ones. So there might be, the data's a bit choppy, but there's a very clear trend.
Well, when I had a bit of a high-level look at that data set you've just shared out there with the industry, I looked at 20,000 installations a week at a 35 kilowatt-hour average. It's about 700 megawatt-hours per week, which is well over 2 gigawatt-hours. Now, we saw in the data that April there was over 2 gigawatt-hours installed. So that aligns there. And now if we look at the new numbers that you've just got out of the Minister's office of around 10,000 per week at 20 kilowatt hours, that's going to get up to circa 400 megawatt hours per week. So we could still see up around 1.5 gigawatt hours going in per month.
That's pretty good, I reckon.
But we could see softer than that. And the reason I want to, like you're saying, the numbers are chopping around a bit at the moment. The one thing that I've seen so often on the Solar Coaster, and this is called the Solar Coaster podcast, mate, but maybe we should have called it the Battery Coaster at the moment. It's the Battery Coaster today, is, the people need to be responsible on what they're doing in the market at all levels for sustainability of their businesses and the industry. Now, we see people in my section of the market, being the wholesale distributor, people taking a position on stock too high as demand comes off like this, and then being in financial stress and pressure. We see that at the installer level. We see that across the market. So, it's one thing that sharing this information with the industry is to make sure that you are looking at your business and being sustainable through potentially a slightly softer market. But this is really what needed to be done with the scheme, with how it was running.
I think so,
David,
Yeah, and look, the government looked at it, and you might remember, we talked about this in November, and I was heavily involved talking at the highest levels of the government, the very highest levels possible on this, and it was clearly a bit, it had gotten away from them for where they thought it was, and we don't want to have a battery coaster. We don't want to end up in the boom bust cycle that we've had in solar panels. So we want, I think, an industry that is predictable, Liam, so that people aren't, making those mistakes in the ordering, the supply chains, or overcommitting and finding themselves caught out with product that might end up being obsolete or something like that. So we want this to be a predictable industry that's going at a sustainable level. That's still, I think, if we can do 10,000, that's still really good, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a great, that would be a fantastic sustainable pace for the sector. We always knew, though, that in the redesign of it, which we were heavily, that there would be a drop-off, that we knew this was coming, but the idea was going to have to be a step down, but hopefully the scheme does ratchet down, but hopefully prices might come down through innovation. But we want that to be a predictable, steady process as the sort of level of subsidy drops, as it has been now for a while in solar panels as well. So that that's what we want to see.
Do you feel there's stronger investment certainty for solar retailers and installers and suppliers like us? Do you think we've got better certainty than over coming years leading out to 2030?
I do. I am. And I know, and I talk to all sorts of people who go, oh, no, the government's going to run out of money and stuff like that. They're going to end it and they're worried about it. Nothing's certain in life. Nothing's certain in politics. So I can't give you a guarantee. But I am as certain as I can be that this scheme will run. The government is strongly committed to it. I saw that firsthand, talking at the very highest levels of their commitment to it. It is incredibly popular in the general public. There's not a day goes by where a politician doesn't contact us and say, I want to go out and be photographed next to a battery in my electorate. And as we've talked about earlier in the podcast, it is bringing down power prices at a time where cost of living is the number one issue in politics. It is so it is working. So it has been such a success, and the government recognises that. I think now we've got it on a sustainable path. The funding is there, but they have also committed to a scheme, not a funding envelope. So, in the event that we end up exceeding it because it's so popular, don't worry, the Smart Energy Council will be in there as we were in November, September last year, arguing hard at the highest levels for additional funding if that should be necessary. They have committed to a 5-year scheme, and I have every confidence that it will remain. And I think, as the industry representative, I'm saying that, and I think our members and your listeners should make plans on that basis. But that means being sensible as well in how you order stock, and let's get off the boom bust cycle and that battery coaster.
Mate, that's exciting news, and it's actually good for investment certainty. As I said, we've increased staff count, we've increased our stock holdings at the right level in line with what our customers are selling, and investment certainty is so important for business. I know the installers and retailers out there will be happy to hear that the new tuned down rebate is giving more certainty within the current additional $5 billion funding envelope, but you're very positive about being able to lobby for more to get it out to 2030 because that's the intention of the policy.
If it ever came to that, and hopefully it might not, but I would.
Knowing our industry, mate, we'll probably even get through it as it's tuned down before 2030, mate. So we're going to need you there lobbying for more.
That would be another sign of how successful it was, right? Like if that's what happens. I guess the point about it all is we're here to stay now. We are part of the system. We are an integral part of the system. We have changed the electricity system in a way that has never been done anywhere else in the world in 11 months. We've changed the whole electricity system. We're integral to it, right? We are a hugely important part of it. Governments recognise that. It's our job to remind them of that, though. But we're here to stay. We're just going to see more and more electrification. That means more and more need for electricity in households, in small businesses, for EVs and for electrifying appliances. So the future is really bright for our sector. I'm really excited about the next few years and what it'll bring. And as I say, it's my job to pound those halls of Canberra and make sure that they're sticking to their word and delivering for our sector.
Mate, David McElrea, SEC CEO in here, mate, on the solar coaster, or maybe it should have been battery coaster for this special edition.
Battery coaster special edition. We'll have to rebrand.
Yeah, battery coaster special edition. I want to say thank you so much for coming.
Thanks,
and what a great day
Liam.
It's been as well, mate.
Yeah, it's been a great day. I've really enjoyed seeing it and seeing what you guys do and all the things you've shown me. It's been terrific. It's great for me to get out, out of the office, in and seeing things on the ground. So thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you, David.
Thanks,
Cheers.
mate.